Hey everybody, and welcome to the Startup Savant podcast. I'm your host, Ethan, and this is a show about the stories, challenges, and triumphs of fast-scaling startups and the founders who run them. Our guest on the show today is Marina Martianova. Marina is the founder and CEO of Seamm, a company that creates digital twins of real-world fashion collections for virtual worlds. Marina recently led Seamm through a seed round of $1.7 million. This was long after the crypto crash and quite a bit of time from when we were hearing about the Metaverse in the news every day. And Seamm doesn't stop at the digital. They are working with real-world fashion brands to bring several other benefits to those companies and their customers. Before Seamm, she founded a company called Candice, a natural dessert company that distributed their product to more than 1,400 locations around the world. And in 2020, she was able to successfully exit that company to make way for her work on Seamm. All right, we're going to get a lot more from Marina in a moment, but before that, I want to ask you a favor. If you've been listening to the pod for a while, take a second to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We're setting a goal to get 100 reviews by episode 100. And if you do leave a review, thank you for your help. All right, without any further interruption, let's welcome Marina Martianova to the show. Marina, how's it going today?
Hi, thank you so much for such a great introduction. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's almost sunny here in beautiful Ann Arbor, and I hear that you have lots of sun where you're at. Is that true?
It is true. I'm actually in Barcelona, and it's amazing here right now because the spring is already here, and it's very sunny, so I love it, and I highly recommend coming.
All right. Well, I'm getting on a plane after here and heading straight there, so we will see how that works out. All right, let's jump into this. Can you tell us what is Seamm?
Well, you did a pretty good introduction, but basically Seamm is the company that works both with fashion brands and consumers, and we create digital twins for real-world fashion collections to be used in video games and metaverses, as well as to be like a marketing tool or a way of communication for consumers with fashion brands.
All right, so this product, you are creating a digital match for a physical product that a fashion company has created. Is that correct?
Let's just make it more simple. So imagine you came to your favorite store, name any brand, and in the store you purchase sneakers. And the sneakers have a QR code on them that you can scan with our app, and you get the 3D copy of the exact sneakers you got. That also can be transferred to, for example, Decentraland. So if you play Decentraland, you can have it instantly in your account. And with those sneakers, 3D sneakers in your app, you can get discounts from your favorite brand, announcements of new collections, and just basically anything that comes to their mind in terms of marketing. So I hope this example helps. It's should be more easy to understand.
It absolutely does. Can you tell us what is Decentraland? Decentraland
is a metaverse. A simple answer is like that. It's a metaverse.
All right, and I know there's multiple different definitions of metaverse, and some are games, and some are not, and some are, digital worlds that you can use like a VR headset to walk through. What is the kind of extent of the metaverse that Decentraland is?
Technically, it is a space where you can come in with your friends or just come and meet new people, being completely virtual, where also you might find your favorite brands doing events. So actually, there are a lot of things going on there. I would say that my definition of metaverse is when you have A, communication with other real people, and B, you have more content. So like you're not very limited to what a gameplay has to offer to you. So when you have like this creativity, when you have different events happening, and when you have actual people, I would say this is the metaverse. And then it doesn't matter, it's Web3, Web2, like all of those buzzwords. But this is my own definition, though.
Okay, gotcha. Well, it's good to have. Yeah, it's really good to have, your definition. Like I said, I know there are a lot of definitions, so it's good to know what we're working with today. And I think, if I'm correct, Decentraland is something that you can get into in a VR headset. Is that correct?
You can actually just get with your computer.
Oh, fantastic.
So
okay.
It's simpler. It's even easier. You don't have to own any kind of like tech, except for just computer.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so what is the problem that is actually being solved with Seamm and the work that you all are doing? I mean, we had our metaverse, our avatars, I'm assuming, were already dressed in the metaverse, and these fashion brands in the real world are already creating, clothing and accessories that people can wear. So what is the actual problem that's being solved here?
Let's divide it into two parts, because one is for fashion brands. They are seeking for a better way to connect with the existing customers, meaning that they want to know more on, and it might sound creepy, but they really want to know more on their preferences or how much a fan they are of their brands. And they want to connect in a new way, meaning not using SMS or emails, but also having something more creative. The second part is that they're looking for a new audience that is playing video games already and that is hanging out in the digital space, and they need to enter that space because it's like where the audience is sitting. And these people are getting older and older, and they're buying more and more products from those fashion brands. And for people, it's about self-expression. So meaning that if I own a Louis Vuitton bag, I'm not able to show it to my friends in the virtual world that I'm owning this bag, right? And it's like, meaning that I cannot really identify myself really well. I cannot express myself really well. Maybe Louis Vuitton is a part of who I am, for example.
All right. So for these customers that you are seeing coming in here and purchasing these items, do you think that most of them are coming to purchase the real world item and they're getting the digital copy with it? Or do you think that most of them are coming to purchase the digital copy and then getting the real world item as kind of the secondary thing? Like which are you seeing is the more wanted thing?
That's a very good question. I think to a normal consumer, it's still the real thing, meaning something to wear in real life. But we see more and more use cases where people value digital items over the physical ones. And we see use cases in the fashion industry where companies are selling, for example, NFTs, and then they're giving something physical in addition to it. So I would say it's two different audiences. Of course, the first one would prevail always because we're people who need to wear something, right? But the second part also exists, and it's becoming more and more popular, especially among Gen Z, which is like, again, a buzzword right now, but that's true.
Gotcha. Yeah. It seems like we are, as a culture, as a society, kind of putting ourselves more into the digital space and maybe even slightly less, especially over these last few years, less in the physical world, and kind of replacing our physical selves with our digital selves a little bit. So it totally makes sense to me that if you wanted to express yourself where you are, that you would have to have the option to have the things that you want that represent who you want to be viewed as in whatever world you are spending the time in. And we've already seen large fashion brands like Gucci, Balenciaga, Prada take interest in having their products in the digital world. What do you think the major drive behind this is? Is it just as what you said, only getting those new customers, or is there something else, something different that makes these companies want to be represented in the digital world?
I think it's all combined. They just see that it's necessary. For example, the collaboration Balenciaga did with Fortnite, which is some people call it the Metaverse, other people call it just a video game. But what they did there is that they see there is a huge audience that already wears Balenciaga. And like, why aren't they having skins of Balenciaga in the game, right? So I think it's both to connect with the people who already are like fans of the brand and get the new audience, but also to try it out because it's inevitable that fashion has to go into the digital space. Because even us right now, we're talking, like I'm looking at the screen, right? I don't see it in person. And it's also some part that digital fashion might take over. Because if it was a bit different format, I would have to wear something here, right? If it's not just a camera. So I think they are testing out things and trying to get the sense of like the best form of entering the space, as well as like finding the most successful use cases for now and for later.
That makes sense. So when you're reaching out to these fashion companies, when you are, I mean, I'm assuming that there's outbound sales calls that you have to make to these different fashion companies. Are you finding that these folks are aware of this digital movement to have things in the digital world? Are they taking like 5 calls a day from people just like you who want to put their clothes into the metaverse? Or do you find that you are more often having to explain what the metaverse is and what the benefit to their brand is to put their stuff into digital?
I would say the usual case is that they know about the space in general, but they're like, please tell us more, like educate us on like what we should do. This is like the most common thing, although sometimes we see fashion brands that know what exactly they want from that space. So meaning, for example, they say, hey, we want to be in video games. We want to have this collection up. We want to have digital twins. So they're being like super straightforward and educated. But more often it's just us having a conversation and what makes better sense for their brand strategy to do at this specific point of time.
What do you see evolving in this sector? I mean, where do you see we're starting to see the beginnings of these metaverses, whether they be the video games or something deeper, and we're starting to see these just like what we said, these brands that are putting their stuff into the metaverses. But where do you think we're going to be in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
We discussed this question a lot with the Instituto Marangoni when I was giving lecture to the students that are just learning fashion industry. And they asked me this question. And I think the honest answer is we don't know yet. So we know that digital fashion is going to be there. And maybe in 3, 4 years, it's not going to change much. So it's not like all of us suddenly are going to wear VR headphones or what's it called? Like VR thing, and like be in the metaverse and like replace our normal life with it completely. And like suddenly everything is going to change. No, like most likely not. And we will see like very not steep, very slow evolution of the space towards like more and more content. But eventually we don't know what's going to win. So we don't know which metaverse is going to win. We don't know which digital fashion company is going to win, what is going to be like, right? If we're going to purchase just simple digital assets, or is going to be just the copies of our like real life items. So we don't know, and that's the beauty.
So yeah, we're going to get into, you mentioned something specific of these different metaverses and the fact that, we don't have one out and away winner. And I don't think that we will have one out and away winner of like which metaverse is the metaverse. Obviously we're seeing, Decentraland. We've got all sorts of other things. We're going to get a little bit more into that here in a little bit because I've got some questions for you. But I want to jump into funding and investment. So in 2022, you all took a seed round of $1.7 million, I think it was. So congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So in some other interviews that we found in research, you've mentioned that there's one specific investor that really saw your vision and helped to make Seamm a reality. Can you tell us about that relationship?
Yeah, it's called, the investor is called the Lydian Group, and it's basically a tech conglomerate of different companies that are all innovation focused, I would put it this way. So yeah, this is like the major investor, and those are the people who believed in our company.
All right, and can you tell us how you initially got connected with this investor that ended up funding your round?
Yeah, it was pretty random, to be honest. It was like a shared event with our friends who are founders, and I was just introduced with no specific topic or agenda whatsoever. So we were just like, we had conversation for 20 minutes without like sharing anything about the startups. So yeah, it was quite random when we met.
Okay, so this was a warm introduction at an event from another group of friends that you had that were also founders. Where did you meet these founders? Is this, do you just have a group of people that you run around with all the time that happen to be founders, or how did you get connected with these founders?
No, it actually, because I also had my startup before, you tend to meet a lot of founders anyways. So meeting on different events, or for example, in New York City, there are several groups where founders just connect, and it just happens naturally. And then by one founder, you get introduced to another founder, you become friends. So that's how you grow your network. I wouldn't even say I'm doing it on purpose. I just love those people in general, and they're my friends. So that's how I get to know, I would say, the majority of them.
So is that something that you would recommend to other founders, is to be going to these events and meeting people and growing not necessarily just your professional network, but also your kind of friend network through these events?
Exactly. And I think it works much better when you meet people not because you want to like have them in your network for some specific reason, or like to use them in a bad or good way. Like, I think it's better just to connect with people, and in general, they have the same interests as you do because you're both founders. You have similar issues. You have similar things that motivate you. So absolutely, I would recommend to connect with people because they're just like-minded, and you'll probably love them.
All right, so let's go back to the initial, meeting with those investors. What was in your pitch that got these investors to really see your vision and want to move forward with it?
I think it was pretty bad because at that time we pivoted since that time, because we were discussing more like digital fashion at its core without connecting with like real world. The only connection that I had in my mind was the authentication feature. Basically, we still have it, right? So the QR code is connected to the serial number, and you can authenticate each item you get. But I didn't have the idea so refined. So I think that the spark that was caused by my pitch was just because it's very innovative. And you can definitely see that a lot is going on in the gaming industry and the metaverse industry, and the investors knew about it. They knew that there was like still some space for companies going to make it in that digital fashion space. So it was pretty bad, but the conversation started. And here we are.
So did they help you to kind of establish your vision and kind of move you in this pivot, or was that something that you came to on your own and then you came back to them and said, "Hey, I've expanded this idea, I've expanded this concept into what it is now," and then they were interested? Was it you driving, or were they kind of having quite a bit of input?
I think initially we just had a lot of conversations with actual fashion brands during our journey in the very beginning. So we figured out that we can refine the idea, but it was always back and forth with the investors. So they were giving me some ideas, I was giving the ideas back, and we were just it was a discussion more than just like, hey, this is what we're going to build, period. And still is, so.
Gotcha. So it obviously worked. You got your seed round. You're working through that. Do you know if you will be taking on any additional funding in the future?
I really hope that we will in the future, because it means we're growing. So yeah.
Do you know, it sounds like maybe that's not something you're thinking about right now. It sounds like maybe you're kind of in the building phase, in the trenches. Does that sound more accurate?
Yeah, I would say we're in the building phase as well as in the working phase, where we have actual customers. Mm-hmm. And we have the product that's launched, which is very important. So it's like the process of refining it, adding more features, but also like making it go out there and be already a product that people are using on a daily basis.
So when you're making these calls to, I know we already talked a little bit about, whether or not you're having to explain the metaverse or all that, but what do these phone calls look like when you're reaching out to brands? Is it you that's still picking up the phone, or do you have a sales team that's picking up the phone and calling them? And then once you get on the phone, What does this kind of pitch to the brands look like?
Great question. It's both. So we have a business development team that's working on new leads and generating new leads. But I'm also taking calls, since I think it's very important to hear the feedback. And we're still also refining the idea together with brands. So I'm on the calls as well. And the pitch, basically our key idea is to get a sense of what they're looking for in terms of their brand strategy. It's always different. It's never the same. And once we understand that, we just introducing the product in that way that might benefit to their brand strategy. So I can just give you several examples if that helps. For example, brand tells us, look, we know that our consumers are gamers and they really want to have this in this specific video game. And this is one use case scenario. And then we think of we can give them multiple ways of basically making the strategy happen. Or in some other cases, we hear that we want to give additional value to our consumers. We want to connect with them better because we are tired of using SMS. And we just need to give additional value. And it's another thing. So I always try to refine the pitch towards the goal that they have, because we can help in many situations.
So when you're speaking with these investors, I'm assuming that you're hearing about some other things that they're into, or their kind of ideas about investing in this space versus that space. Are you seeing funding, maybe not necessarily for your business specifically, but for other businesses in the Web3 or Metaverse spaces? Are you seeing funding for them being more difficult to get than it used to be, or do you think that it's kind of coming back?
Technically, there are investors that believe in Web3 space and they haven't stopped investing. Maybe they did a small pause, or they were more cautious about their investments at some point, but they keep doing that. And there are just some investors that think that this industry is just not for them, and it's still okay. And same thing for the food industry, right? When I had a food startup, I don't know, Sequoia would probably tell me you're not the portfolio company for me, because we just don't invest in that space. So it's all about finding the right profile of the investor.
So besides finding the right investors to take on your type of business, do you have what do you think that founders can take away from your experience to overcome the challenge of getting an investment for their Web3 or Metaverse company?
I would say it's the same for any company. You just need to make sure that you really get on well with those people. You understand each other. You have the same expectations, because expectations matter a lot. And sometimes people think that they're being understood, but it's not the case. I think it really has to be the right people. This is what matters the most. And they have to be professional investors, ideally. Because in multiple cases, startups raise funds from angels that are not professional or friends. And this can turn into a great case, but also into a very bad case. So you have to be sure that if you take money from someone, you know that this is most likely going to work out well.
What's your thought behind the professional investor? What are the disadvantages of using investor funds from an angel, or friends and family, or something like that?
It just has its specifics. So if you take money from people who are not really professional investing, you have to sit down and say, hey, this is what I'm going to build. I'm not sure it's going to work out. This is my plan. Those are my projections. I will be updating you, I don't know, X amount, for example, once a quarter. So you have to be very specific on the expectations. And if this person says yes, and you agree that this is something that you both are willing to take a risk on, then it's perfect. And I think that it also works. And in many cases, I would say that probably not non-VCs, but the majority of funds would not invest in you in the very beginning. So you have to go to angels. but angels also can be professional or not professional.
All right. What are some trends that you're seeing in either the fashion industry or the Web3 world that new entrepreneurs could and should be taking advantage of?
It's definitely a connection to the real world. We see more and more that fashion brands stop launching just simple NFTs with no value behind them, meaning either giving some physical objects, like, I don't know, hoodies or whatever. There were multiple cases, or giving accesses to events or like some private clubs, but it has to have some value behind it. And most likely this value will be connected to the real world. And I think you really should consider this because we see that the campaigns that are not taking this into account are not successful, mostly anymore. But also you have to, I think that it's very important to just keep tracking the industry and be ready to pivot at any point, because the industry is not set in stone yet. We don't know the winners. We don't know what the players are going to do in the next year or so. You have to be always like you have to always monitor the news and the trends, but I guess it works for any industry. So, so it should be always like that. Yeah.
All right. What is your number one piece of advice for early stage entrepreneurs?
Keep working on your mindset, meaning that you should always expand what seems to be possible for you. You should always expand the ways you think about the world, the questions that you ask yourself and you ask other people. Just be proactive in terms of growing your mindset, because it's all in your head, first of all, and then it goes to reality. And you translate that to your team and to your customers. So you have to work on the way you think about this world. And this is the most important thing. And then, yeah, be very wise in terms of choosing your investors and in terms of choosing your team. This, I guess, is... I'm curious what other founders tell you. What is like the most common thing?
You know, it really depends. There's a lot of people that say that you have to just have a high pain tolerance. Some people come on and say that businesses are people, and that you have to have the right team. You have to build the right team. You have to have the right customers. You have to know, who instead of just what. And then some people come on and say that things, like product market fit or product founder fit or problem founder fit, I guess is the way that they mention that, are the number one thing, and that you've got to make sure that all of those things are right so that you set yourself up for success. But it's really different. It's really different for the different entrepreneurs that come on. And this is one of my favorite questions, and that's why we ask it every time, because the breadth of answers that we get, we almost never have completely exact matching, overlapping answers. So I really love asking this question.
Well, these are good answers. I agree with them. But to me, still, it's the most important thing is just to expand your mind and to be able to think out of the box, to question things. Because if you don't ask questions, then you just simply have an answer, and then you just work in the same direction and you keep making the same mistakes and you keep just doing what you used to do long time ago. So you have to always develop.
I agree. Having the right questions is just as important, if not more important, than having the right answers. So thank you for that. Thank you for that advice. All right. Last question before we wrap up. Where can people connect with you online, and how can our listeners support Seamm?
They can connect with me personally on LinkedIn, which is, I guess, the most common answer, but also with our team on social, meaning Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. They can always visit our website, shoot an email through our website. That should be enough.
Yep, we can definitely get a hold of you there. So we are going to put all of those links, all of those profiles, everything that we've heard today in the show notes. Folks, you can find that over at startupsavant.com/podcast. But that is going to be a wrap for this episode. Marina, thank you for coming on. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much. I love talking to you, and I really hope this is going to be helpful for your listeners. So yeah, feel free, guys, everyone, feel free to reach out even if you just have a simple question. And it was a lovely time for me. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone, that's going to be it for this week's episode of the Startup Savant podcast. Thanks for hanging out. Hey, if you haven't already, check out our YouTube channel. We post all of our full-length interviews over there, along with shorts and other assorted goodness. Just head over to YouTube and search the Startup Savant podcast, and we will be right there. You can find us here again next week and every week, Wednesday mornings, right here, with more stories from founders who rock. We will see you there. And until then, go build something beautiful.
The Startup Savant podcast is produced by 𝙗𝙗𝑔𝙗𝑒𝑐.